This is the lesson for 7-3. What you're doing today is you are graphing not only one, not only two, but a system of three or more inequalities on the graph, all right, on the same graph at the same time. So instead of looking for, when we did solving systems, instead of solving and looking for the double shaded area, in this question, for example, we're looking for the quadruple shaded area. It really pays to try and be as neat as possible. Sometimes we get sort of carried away with our shading and stuff like that. I'm going to show you a couple little strategies to help you out, especially with trying to be neat with your shading. I would recommend using different colors for each one. Some people have done their graphs and use like the same color for each inequality. I wouldn't recommend doing that for this. All right. So if we take a look at this one, now this one is already done for us. Notice that we have four different lines and we are getting this quadruple shaded area right here in the middle. All right, so any point in this quadruple shaded green area would be a possible answer. All right, so that's what we're doing today. If we look at this one, we had shade x is less than or equal to 360. Now you have to remember hazy vixen. All right, you have to remember hazy vixen. Now this zero slope and this no slope, we didn't get to that part yet, but that's what the Z and the N stands for, in case you're wondering if the other letters stood for something. They actually do. What you need to know is that hazy, when it's a Y equals equation, it is a horizontal line. When it's vixen, that is when it is an X equals equation, and it is a vertical line, a line that goes straight up and down. So we had X is less than or equal to 360. So that was a solid vertical line at 360. When I go to do this one, how I would personally shade it is I wouldn't go and do this. Normally you're used to doing something like this and shading this whole area over to the left of the line. Or what some people have done is some people get really ugly and go like this and shade that left-hand side of the line. I would not do either of those two strategies when I go to shade today. What I would do is just put little tiny lines like this so you could sort of keep track of where you are shading. All right. I would just shade it like that. For the second one, we have X is greater than 120. And notice that I'm sort of making a little key for myself. I've noticed that some people have done that on their homework as well. I think that's a very good strategy. We have X is greater than or equal to 120. So again, that is a vertical line at 120 and we're shading above it. So notice how I'm just putting my little blue. Normally I would shade all the way over to the right, but instead I'm just doing these little tiny lines like that. Then we have the inequality y is greater than or equal to 0.25x. Now 0.25x is actually this lower line. So we're shading up above that. So if we're shading up above it, it would look like this. And then for the third one, let's switch to orange here. We would have y is less than or equal to 0.4x. So you're shading below this one. And now what we're looking for is where all these come together. All right, they're sort of going to form a shape somewhere on the screen. All right, this one happens to have four sides, but notice how the shading is inside this entire green area. Again, that's the way that I'd recommend doing it, because if you use those big long lines or if you try and color it in or something like that, it's going to get really, really ugly really, really quickly, because we're not just graphing two things. We're not just graphing one thing. You're either going to have questions that have three or four of them that you have to shade in. But again, for your solution, for your solution, you're looking for a point in that quadruple means 4, shaded area. So any point in here in the green would work. So for example, over to 200 up to 60. This point right here would be a good solution. Again, there are multiple solutions that you could pick. You could pick any point in that green area. So let's take a look at one and actually physically do it. So again, you have to remember hazy vixen. All right, you have to remember hazy vixen. And I screwed that up. We have to remember hazy vixen. So when we take a look at x is greater than or equal to 0, remember x goes with the v. So this is going to be a vertical line. It's going to be a vertical line at x is greater than or equal to 0. So x is greater than or equal to 0 is actually right along the y axis because that's where x is equal to 0. It is a solid line because you see the picture of the solid line. And we are shading up above of the line. We want all the numbers that are bigger than 0. So the ones that are bigger than 0 are going to be on the right-hand side right here because those numbers are all bigger than 0. For the second one, all right, for the second one, I have y is greater than 0. Well, y is with hazy, so y is going to be a horizontal line going straight across at 0. So this one is, again, a solid line because we see the or equal to, but this time we're going like this. And we want all the numbers that are bigger than y, or sorry, bigger than 0. So we're looking at all the numbers that are up above this. So right away, these first two lines have narrowed down our solution area to the first quadrant here. All right, your answers are going to end up somewhere in that green square right now. Now, I'm not going to leave that green square there, all right, because we still have more to do. I just wanted you to see that we're really focusing in on this green area based on the double shaded area. But now we have x plus y is less than or equal to 6. I'm going to go up to the board because it's a little bit easier for me to do up there. So we have for this next one, I'm going to switch to blue. We have x plus y is less than or equal to 6. You will have to take the skills that we learned earlier in the chapter and rearrange for y. So we need to try and get the y all by itself. So you're going to subtract x and subtract x to get this y all by itself. Remember, we want to switch around the order. You can't do 6 minus x, but we can switch around the order to be negative x plus 6. So this means that our slope for this line is negative 1 over 1, because there's really a negative 1 in front of that x. So that really means down 1 over 1. Our y-intercept is 0, 6. 0, plus or minus, whatever our plus or minus is. Because we have the or equal to, it's going to be a solid line that we're using. And because it's less than, we're going to shade down below. So we're going to start at 0, 6. We're going to start right here. And we're going to follow that slope. We're going to go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. Notice how we're narrowing down our sort of, if you were looking for like buried treasure or something, or a plane that crashed in the ocean, we're narrowing down our search area, all right? So this is a solid line that we're going to use, and we're shading below that line. So that's how we are narrowing down. Now our only possible answer area is down to this area in the blue highlighted area, all right? We're down to that narrow down region. So now we have one more left to graph, all right? The one that we have left to graph is this one. That one is already in the correct form. It has the y all by itself. So our slope is 2 over 1. That really means up 2 over 1. Our y-intercept is 0, comma, -5. Because of the or equal to, it's going to be a solid line. And because of the greater than, we are shading up above that line. So starting off at 0, -5, we're going to start down here. We're going to follow the pattern. Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And then we're going to connect the dots using a solid line. And we are going to shade above that line. So above the line is over in here. Now, again, we want where all 4 of these come together. All 4 of these come together right in this green area. All right, if we take a look at our shading, it comes together all inside that green area. So for a solution, right, a possible solution, I could pick this point right here. Make your life easy. I could pick 1, 1, over to 1, up to 1. That's super easy. I could pick any point in that green area. But notice how shading using just those little tiny lines kept the graph nice and neat. Think about how ugly this graph would have been if I would have started going like this and like this and like this and like this. All right, you can't tell what the heck is going on if you go to try and shade it like that. All right, so again, I would not suggest shading like that, like how you have been. I would suggest shading like this just to try and keep things nice and neat. Questions on that one? Let's take a look at the next one. And I know these are super, super hard for you to try these on your own without having that background grid. So let's take a look at this one. Again, in this one, the first thing that I notice is from this first one, we have a hazy vixen graph. So it's either going to be a vertical line or a horizontal line. We have y is greater than or equal to 1. Well, that would be with hazy because we have the y. So this is going to be a horizontal line at 1. I can see that it is a solid line at 1. So here's my picture of my solid line. It's greater than, so I'm shading up above that graph. For the second one, I have y is less than or equal to -2x plus 7. That's in the correct form. So there's nothing for us to rearrange. Our slope is -2 over 1. That really means down 2 over 1. Our y-intercept is 0, 7. We are using a solid line and we are shading below it. I personally find it very helpful to write that information down. So 0, 7, over 0 up to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm starting my graph right there. And now I'm going to follow that slope. Down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. So I'm looking at that graph. I'm going to use a solid line. And I'm going to shade below that line. Now, below that line would be down in here. So now I've narrowed down my sort of search area, my solution area. I've narrowed down that solution area to in here, right? I've narrowed down my solution area to in there because that's where the double shaded area is. But I have one more that I need to graph still. So let's take a look at this third one, right? With this third one, I'm looking at this equation now. I have a 1 in front of the x, so my slope is 1 over 1. That means up 1 over 1. I'm starting off at 0, comma 1. It is a solid line because you have the or equal to, and you are shading below that line. So I'm starting at 0, 1. 0, 1 is right there. Oops, sorry, no, it's not. 0, 1 is right here. And now I'm going up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. I'm going to just work backwards, work that same pattern going backwards, just to get a little bit of a more longer line. I'm going to use a solid line because you have the or equal to. And I am shading below that line. Now, take a look at our small little narrowed down area that we have. Our answer is very, very limited in this question. It is only in this little area. All right, that's the only possible place that our answer could be. Now, because these are solid lines, I could use where the lines cross. So could I use over to 3 up to 2? Could I use that point right there? Sure, because they're on solid lines. If they were dotted, I could not. I could use that one. I could use that one. Or anywhere in that green. So I could use a point like this, which is over to 2, up to 2. So that one had a very, very small little solution area. Questions on that one? All right, let's take a look at this one. Again, this time you have to rearrange them. All right, you have to rearrange them for y equals. But this first one you don't. All right, this first equation, your slope would be 2 over 1. That really means up 2 over 1. We're starting off at 0, comma 5. It's less than, so this is going to be a dotted line, and we are shading below it. So starting off at 0, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're starting off right here, and we're going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Now, because these graphs are very big, I want an accurate line. So I'm just going to continue on with this pattern and draw some dots going backwards of the pattern. Over 1, down 2, over 1, down 2, just to continue on that accurate pattern. I'm going to use a dotted line to connect the dots. And I am going to shade below that line. So that was the first one. For the second one, my equation right here is not in the correct form. I need to rearrange it for y. So I have x plus y is less than 3. I need to do minus x and minus x. So I have y is less than negative x plus 3. That's going to make my slope negative 1 over 1, or down 1 over 1, because there's really a negative 1 in front of that x. And I'm going to start off at 0, 3. It's a less than symbol, so it's going to be a dotted line, and we are shading below. So 0, comma 3. 0, comma 3 is right here. I'm going down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. So I'm going to work that pattern a little bit backwards as well, and just keep on going with this one to get a more accurate graph. I'm going to use a dotted line to connect the dots, and I am shading below that line. So right now, I've narrowed down the solution area to be right in here. All right, I've narrowed down that solution area to be down there. But now I need to do one more. So take a look at this one. We have 2x, we have 2x minus 3y is less than or equal to 6. So I want to try and solve for y. So I need to do minus 2x and minus 2x. Be careful, this one is a little bit more complicated than any that we've had today. We need to switch around the order here to be negative 2x plus 6. Please pay attention right now. Notice that we have -3 times y. Remember, you have to divide. When we divide each and every term by -3. Please think back to last week. Remember that if the bottom number is negative when we're dividing, if you're dividing by a negative number, you have to flip the sign. So less than is going to become greater than. So these cancel out. We have y. We need to flip the sign. Less than or equal to becomes greater than or equal to. We're flipping the sign because we're dividing by a negative. -2 divided by -3, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So that's 2/3. 6 divided by -3 is -2 or -2. So my slope is 2/3. That's up 2 over 3. My y-intercept is 0, -2. It's going to be a solid line, and we are going to shade above that line. So starting at 0, -2, we're starting right here. We're going to go up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3. I'm going to work backwards as well, just to get a little bit more accurate of a graph. We're going to use a solid line to connect the dots, and we are shading above this line. Now, notice what happened to our little area of our solution. It got very, very small. Our area of our solution is right in here this time. I think a very easy one to pick out of there would be 0, 0 right in the middle. All right, that's nice, a nice easy point right in the solution set, 0, 0. You could not pick where the two lines cross this time because you have dotted lines, right? You can't pick where two dotted lines cross or when either one dotted line crosses. All right, I know this is going to be hard for you to graph on your own, but this one's a little bit easier. Please try to do this one on your own, please. All right, please try and do this one on your own. It's going to be a little bit difficult, but we have some hazy vixen going on, so it should make it a little bit easier to graph. Okay, give you about 30 more seconds or so. Some people graph fast, some people graph a little bit slower. So looking at that first equation, we have a y is greater than -3. Y goes with this one, which is an h, which is horizontal. All right, so we're going to have a horizontal line at -3. This is a solid line right here because of the or equal to. We are shading up above because it is greater than. For the second one, we have y is less than or equal to 0. So again, we have a y, so this is going to be a horizontal line at 0. It's a solid line. It's a solid line because of the or equal to. It's less than, so we're shading below. Right now, our answers are in between the red and the blue. So let's keep on seeing what's going to happen. Now we have y is less than or equal to 2x plus 5. So my slope is going to be 2 over 1. That really means up 2 over 1. Starting off at 0, comma 5. It's going to be a solid line because of the or equal to. And we are going to shade down below because it's less than. So starting off at 0, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is where I'm going to start off at. I'm going to go up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. Now, I know that when I connect these, I need to be very accurate going down. So I'm going to work this pattern going backwards and add some more points, just following that same pattern going backwards, just to make our line a little bit longer and easy to read. It is a solid line, and we are shading below the line. So now my sort of window of answers are right here. Sort of looks like a alligator mouth right there. All right, that's where we're looking at for our possible answers. But there's one more that we need to graph. All right, the one more that we need to graph is x is less than 2. Now x goes with vixen. This is a vertical line with the v. It goes up and down at 2. So it is a dotted line right here at 2. It's a dotted line because it doesn't have the or equal to. It is less than 2. So we want all the numbers that are smaller than 2. So that's on this left-hand side. So that's what that one looks like. So our narrowed down answer area for our solution is right in here. It's just this little box right in there. So what numbers could be a possible solution? Again, I try and stay away from graphing or picking points that are on the lines. You can always pick it if it's on the solid, but not if it's on the dotted. So I would just pick a point like this one right here. This point is over to -1, down to -1. That would be a very good one to pick there. But any of them in this green area would work. You can't pick ones that are on the x is less than 2, but you can pick on the other ones because those are all solid lines. So again, I would be very, very careful with my shading. You will need to rearrange some things. You will need to solve for y, rearrange for y. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, if that bottom number is negative, you have to flip the sign. Also, there are a couple questions on your homework that look like this, where you have like x plus 2 is greater than y. If it's written backwards like this, you have to switch everything around because we need our y to go first and we need our x plus 2 to go second. If you switch around the order, you have to switch the sign as well. So that would switch to less than. So be very, very careful with all those. Try and be as neat as possible on your graphs.